اچھا تھا لا علم ہی مر جاتی، اس علم سے اچھا تھا لا علم ہی مر جاتی. بدکار چھڑی تیرے، بدکار چھڑی تیرے دانتوں پہ لگاتا ہے. بھائی سے وہ یہ کہہ کے کہہ پائی نہ کچھ یہاں سے، بھائی سے وہ یہ کہہ کے کہہ پائی نہ کچھ یہاں سے. صغرا نہ کہیں کہہ دے، صغرا نہ کہیں کہہ دے یہ کون ضعیفہ ہے.
شیر برادر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر. ہائے عباس ہائے عباس ہائے عباس ہائے عباس. مارا گیا دریا پہ میرا شیر برادر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر.
شہ کہتے تھے عباس کے ہاتھوں کو اٹھا کر
اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر. مارا گیا دریا پہ میرا شیر برادر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر.
اے بھائی تیرے غم میں کمر ٹوٹ گئی ہے، میں کیسے بتاؤں تجھے حالت جو میری ہے. ایک ہاتھ ہے سینے پہ تو ایک ہاتھ کمر پر،
اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر. مارا گیا دریا پہ میرا شیر برادر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر.
بھیا میری زینب کو بڑی آس تھی تم سے، آئی تھی وطن چھوڑ کے وہ تیرے سہارے. کس طرح جیے گی وہ تیرے مرنے کا سن کر،
اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر. مارا گیا دریا پہ میرا شیر برادر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر.
غربت پہ میرے حال پہ روتی ہے خدائی، جانے سے تیرے دشت میں ہم لٹ گئے بھائی. عباس تیرے دم سے تھا آباد میرا گھر،
اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر. مارا گیا دریا پہ میرا شیر برادر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر.
ایک تیر تیری آنکھ میں مست ہوا ہے بازو کی طرح سے تیرے پاؤں بھی جدا ہے خون رواں گرز سے زخمی ہے تیرا سر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر کس طرح رکے آنکھ سے آنسو تھا کون سہارا تیرے جب کٹ گئے بازو تو چہرے کے بل زمین سے آیا ہے زمین پر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر سکینہ پانی تو اسے دے دو اٹھو گھر چلو بھیا مر جائے گا یہ بھائی تیری لاش اٹھا کر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر اکبر نے سہارا دیا لاشے سے جری کے ذیشان و کریم اٹھے شہ والا یہ کہہ کر اب کون بچائے گا میری بہنوں کی چادر
این حسین کیست که عالم همه دیوانه اوست این حسین کیست که عالم همه دیوانه اوست این که شمعی است که عالم همه پروانه اوست
سلام کعبه دلها حسین جان سلام کعبه دلها حسین جان سلام شمع محفل ها حسین جان حسین جانم حسین جانم حسین جان حسین جانم حسین جانم حسین جان حسین جانم حسین جانم حسین جان مقصد زندگی ہے تیری خدمت میں نہیں مانگتا ہوں کوئی دولت دے دے بس دولت عزا حسین جان حسین جانم حسین جانم حسین جان حسین جانم حسین جانم حسین جان حسین جانم حسین جانم حسین جان ذکر تیرا بنے میرا وظیفہ میری سانسوں میں ہو حسین حسینہ زندگی تجھ پہ ہو فدا حسین جان حسین جانم حسین جانم حسین جان حسین جانم حسین جانم حسین جان حسین جانم حسین غربت فاطمہ کربا بلا میں ہائے وہ علامہ دشت بلا میں پائے رو کے کہتی رہی بابا حسین جان حسین جان غلام حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان غلام حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان حسین غلام حسین جان شمر کا ہاتھ تھا بہت ہی بھاری میرے رخسار سے لہو ہے جاری چھن چکی ہے میری ردا حسین جان حسین جان غلام حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان غلام حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان حسین غلام حسین جان خون روتی رہی زمین ساری ایسی قربانیاں کبھی نہ دیکھی علامہ علامہ آقا حسین جان حسین جان غلام حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان غلام حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان حسین غلام حسین جان ہوگی شاہد اگر رضا شبیر پھر اسی گھر سے مل سکے گی تنویر موشی پڑ پائے گا نوحہ حسین جان حسین جان غلام حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان غلام حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان حسین غلام حسین جان حسین جان حسین غلام حسین لوگوں کی ہے امید بہت آس ہے مجھ سے امداد کروں گا میں فقط آپ کے صدقے ہاتھوں میں فقط آپ کے ہی میرا بھرم ہے عباس علی تم کو سکینہ کی قسم ہے
کیجیے مشکل میری اب وقت کرم ہے عباس علی تم کو سکینہ کی قسم ہے کیجیے مشکل میری اب وقت کرم ہے عباس علی تم کو سکینہ کی قسم ہے
چہرے سے ہی ظاہر ہے ہوا حال جو دل کا ہے تیرے سوا کوئی نہیں پوچھنے والا زندہ ہوں ابھی تک یہ تمہارا ہی کرم ہے عباس علی تم کو سکینہ کی قسم ہے
کیجیے مشکل میری اب وقت کرم ہے عباس علی تم کو سکینہ کی قسم ہے
عباس علی تم سے تو کچھ چھپ نہیں سکتا جو دل میں ہے ہر بات تمہیں علم ہے مولا خاموش ہوں میں سامنے بس تیرا علم ہے
عباس علی تم کو سکینہ کی قسم ہے کیجیے مشکل میری اب وقت کرم ہے عباس علی تم کو سکینہ کی قسم ہے
کہتا ہے جہاں باب ہوائج تمہیں सकीना की कसम है।
कीजिए मुश्किल मेरी अब वक्त करम है, अब्बास से अली तुमको सकीना की कसम है।
यूं ही तो नहीं दस्त दुआ मैंने उठाया, हाँ खुद से ज्यादा है मुझे तुम पे भरोसा। ये देख मेरा सर तेरी दहलीज पे खम है।
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم، الذي إذا دعيت به على مغالق أبواب السماء للفتح بالرحمة فتحت، وإذا دعيت به على مضائق أبواب الأرض للفرج فرجت، وإذا دعيت به على العسر لليسر تيسرت، وإذا دعيت به على الأموات للنشور انتشرت، وإذا دعيت به على كشف البأساء والضراء انكشفت. وبجلال وجهك الكريم أكرم الوجوه وأعز الوجوه، الذي عنت له الوجوه وخضعت له الرقاب وخشعت له الأصوات ووجلت له القلوب من مخافتك، وبقوتك التي بها تمسك السماء أن تقع على الأرض إلا بإذنك، وتمسك السماوات والأرض أن تزولا، وبمشيئتك التي دان لها العالمون، وبكلمتك التي خلقت بها السماوات والأرض، وبحكمتك التي صنعت بها العجائب، وخلقت بها الظلمة وجعلتها ليلا، وجعلت الليل سكنا، وخلقت بها النور وجعلته نهارا، وجعلت النهار نشورا مبصرا، وخلقت بها الشمس وجعلت الشمس ضياء، وخلقت بها القمر وجعلت القمر نورا، وخلقت بها الكواكب وجعلتها نجوما وبروجا ومصابيح وزينة ورجوما، وجعلت لها مشارق ومغارب، وجعلت لها مطالع ومجاري، وجعلت لها فلكا ومصابح، وقدرتها في السماء منازل فأحسنت تقديرها، وصورتها فأحسنت تصويرها، وأحصيتها بأسمائك إحصاء، ودبرتها بحكمتك تدبيرا، وأحسنت تدبيرها، وسخرتها بسلطان الليل وسلطان النهار والساعات وعدد السنين والحساب، وجعلت رؤيتها لجميع الناس مرءا واحدا. وأسألك اللهم بمجدك الذي كلمت به عبدك ورسولك موسى بن عمران عليه السلام في المقدسين، فوق إحساس الكروبين، فوق غمائم النور، فوق تابوت الشهادة، في عمود النار، وفي طور سيناء، وفي طور سيناء، وفي جبل هوريث، في الوادي المقدس في البقعة المباركة من جانب الطور الأيمن من الشجرة، وفي أرض مصر ب9 آيات بينات. ويوم فرقت لبني إسرائيل البحر، وفي المنبجسات التي صنعت بها العجائب في بحر صوف، وأقدت ماء البحر في قلب الغمر كالحجارة. وجاوزت ببني إسرائيل البحر، وتمت كلمتك الحسن عليهم بما صبروا، وأورثتهم مشارق الأرض ومغاربها التي باركت فيها للعالمين. وأغرقت فرعون وجنوده ومراكبه في اليم. وباسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم، وبمجدك الذي تجليت به لموسى كليمك عليه السلام في طور سيناء، ولإبراهيم عليه السلام وخليلك من قبل في مسجد الخيف، ولإسحاق صفيك عليه السلام في بئر شيعة، وليعقوب نبيك عليه السلام في بيت إيل. وأوفيت لإبراهيم عليه السلام بميثاقك، ولإسحاق بحلفك، وليعقوب بشهادتك، وللمؤمنين بوعدك، وللداعين بأسمائك فأجابت. وبمجدك الذي ظهر لموسى بن عمران عليه السلام على قبة الرمان، وبآياتك التي وقعت على أرض مصر، بمجد العزة والغلبة، بآيات عزيزة، وبسلطان القوة، وبعزة القدرة، وبشأن الكلمة التامة، وبكلمتك التي تفضلت بها على أهل السماوات والأرض، وأهل الدنيا وأهل الآخرة، وبرحمتك التي مننت بها على جميع خلقك، وباستطاعتك التي أقمت بها على العالمين، وبنورك الذي قد خر من فزعه طور سيناء، وبعلمك وجلالك وكبريائك وعزتك وجبروتك التي لم تستقل لها الأرض، وانخفضت لها السماوات، وانزجر له العمق الأكبر، وركدت لها البحار والأنهار، وخضعت لها الجبال، وسكنت لها الأرض بمناكبها، واستسلمت لها الخلائق كلها، وخفقت لها الرياح في جريانها، وخمدت لها النيران في أوطانها. وبسلطانك الذي عرفت لك به الغلبة دحر الدهور، وهمت به في السماوات والأرضين، وبكلمتك كلمة الصدق التي سبقت لأبينا آدم عليه السلام وذريته بالرحمة، وأسألك بكلمتك التي غلبت كل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي تجليت به للجبل فجعلته دكا، وخر موسى صعقا، وبمجدك الذي ظهر على طور سيناء فكلمت به عبدك ورسولك موسى بن عمران، وبطلعتك في ساعير، وظهورك في جبل فاران بربوات المقدسين، وجنود الملائكة الصافين، وخشوع الملائكة المسبحين، وببركاتك التي باركت فيها على إبراهيم خليلك عليه السلام في أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله، وباركت لإسحاق صفيك في أمة عيسى عليهم السلام، وباركت ليعقوب إسرائيل كفي أمة موسى عليهما السلام، وباركت لحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله في عترته وذريته وأمته. اللهم بك ما غبنا عن ذلك ولم نشهد، وآمنا به ولم نرى صدقا وعدلا، أن تصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن تبارك على محمد وآل محمد، وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كأفضل ما صليت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد فعال لما تريد، وأنت على كل شيء قدير. اللهم بحق هذا الدعاء وبحق هذه الأسماء التي لا يعلم تفسيرها ولا تعويلها ولا يعلم باطنها ولا ظاهرها غيرك، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وأن ترزقني خير الدنيا والآخرة، وافعل بي ما أنت أحلوه ولا تفعل بي ما أنا أحلوه، وانتقم لي من أعداء آل محمد، وانتقم لي من أعداء الدين، واغفر لي من ذنوبي ما تقدم منها وما تأخر، ولوالدي ولجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات، ووسع علي من حلال رزقك، واكفني مؤونة إنسان سوء وجاري سوء وسلطاني سوء وقريني سوء ويومي سوء وساعتي سوء، وانتقم لي ممن يكيدني وممن يبغي علي ويريد بي وبأهلي وأولادي وإخواني وجيراني وقراباتي من المؤمنين والمؤمنات ظلما، إنك على ما تشاء قدير وبكل شيء عليم. آمين رب العالمين. اللهم بحق هذا الدعاء تفضل على فقراء المؤمنين والمؤمنات بالغنى والثروة، وعلى مرضى المؤمنين والمؤمنات بالشفاء والصحة، وعلى أحياء المؤمنين والمؤمنات باللطف والكرامة، وعلى أموات المؤمنين والمؤمنات بالمغفرة والرحمة، وعلى مسافر المؤمنين والمؤمنات بالرد إلى أوطانهم سالمين غانمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين وعترته الطاهرين وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
Assalamu alaikum. Today, Friday the 12th of July 2024, is the eve of the 6th of Muharram 1446 AH. The program will begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Brother Johar Kazmi. Please can we welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Please recite in the Lord Salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا عباد لا خوف عليكم اليوم ولا أنتم تحزنون. الذين آمنوا بآياتنا وكانوا مسلمين. ادخلوا الجنة أنتم وأزواجكم تحبرون. ادخلوا الجنة أنتم وأزواجكم تحبرون. يا عبادي لا خوف عليكم اليوم ولا أنتم تحزنون. يا عبادي لا خوف عليكم اليوم ولا أنتم تحزنون. الذين آمنوا بآياتنا وكانوا مسلمين ادخلوا الجنة أنتم وأزواجكم تحبرون. يطاف عليهم بصحاف من ذهب وأكواب وفيها ما تشتهيه الأنفس وتلذ الأعين وأنتم فيها خالدون. وتلك الجنة التي أورثتموها بما كنتم تعملون. وتلك الجنة وتلك الجنة التي أورثتموها بما كنتم تعملون لكم فيها فاكهة كثيرة لكم فيها فاكهة كثيرة منها تأكلون لكم فيها فاكهة كثيرة منها تأكلون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد
Ahsant. Announcements. Please keep your mobile phones on silent during the program, and please keep your belongings with you at all times. The daily program information can be found on our website or via our WhatsApp messaging service. Al-Hadi Youth host How Can Imam Inspire Our Connection with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala with Shaykh Mahdi Rastani. This is open to all ladies in the ELC tonight after the main program. The gents Q&A session with Shaykh Mahdi Rastani will take place tomorrow, Saturday 13th July, after the main program. Announcement for the Mandir and the Rugby car parks. Please note that the gates for both car parks will be closed sharp at 10:45 p.m. The tickets for the course by Shaykh Mahdi Rastani entitled The Secrets of Salah is now sold out, but you can sign up for the waiting list and there are further details on the website. The Muharram Majalis sponsorship scheme is £1,000 per night. Those wishing to sponsor either in part or in full, please contact Brother Arif Punjani or Brother Sajjad Tajani in the gents, the chair lady, Sister Doreen Hirji in the ladies, or the Jamaat office. The Muharram Niyaz Fund is now open. Please donate generously at the Treasury desk. We urge everyone to please be mindful when exiting the marquee, especially when there are large crowds. Additionally, we have limited wall and chair spaces. Please do keep these spaces free for those less able and those that require it the most. Ahsant. Please can we now welcome both Brother Suhail Nasser for a marthiyah, followed by Brother Ibrahim Sincere for a poem with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. कज़ा तू ही मिला दे मेरे बाबा से मुझे कज़ा तू ही मिला दे मेरे बाबा से मुझे मैं वो रुखसार दिखाऊंगी मैं वो रुखसार दिखाऊंगी जो नीलों से भरे कज़ा तू ही मिला दे मेरे बाबा से मुझे भैया असग़र को बताऊंगी जले ख़ैमों से जले ख़ैमों से मैं میں بچاتی رہی جھولے کو میں بچاتی رہی جھولے کو تبھی بال جلے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے میں جو دادی سے ملوں گی تو یہی پوچھوں گی یہی پوچھوں گی پسلیاں ٹوٹی ہو جس کی وہ پسلیاں ٹوٹ ہو جس کی وہ بھلا کیسے جیے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے میرے چاچا جو ملیں گے تو وہ در دیں گے مجھے وہ در دیں گے مجھے پر میں پہنوں گی کہاں اب تو پر میں پہنوں گی کہاں اب تو میرے کان کٹے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے جون معصوم کے روزے پہ صبر سے جانا صبر سے جانا ہو بھی سکتا ہے کہ چوکٹ پہ ہو بھی سکتا ہے کہ چوکٹ پہ تمہیں موت ملے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے بھیا اصغر کو بتاؤں گی جلے خیموں سے جلے خیموں سے میں بچاتی رہی جھولے کو میں بچاتی رہی جھولے کو تبھی بال جلے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے میرے چاچا جو ملیں گے تو وہ در دیں گے مجھے وہ در دیں گے مجھے پر میں پہنوں گی کہاں اب تو پر میں پہنوں گی کہاں اب تو میرے کان کٹے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے میں وہ رخسار دکھاؤں گی میں وہ رخسار دکھاؤں گی جو نیلوں سے بھرے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد
Asant. We will now have a poem by Brother Ibrahim Sincere. Please can we welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So this piece of writing is intended to reflect the sometimes incoherent movement of our thoughts as we navigate through the fragments of the story of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in his last moments, and what came before and what came after. Our thoughts can be incredibly disjointed, sometimes in an almost disorienting way. They move through time, from person to person, and from perspective to perspective. So this piece of writing is, as they say, a stream of consciousness in relation to that. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Your help do I seek in my weakness, though the skies just crumbled above us. And tonight is the night of the lovers, but tonight is the night that we suffer. And the atoms of this air that I breathe in walk through this waterless blood and bear witness and take heed that our heart just crumbled to dust. And there's a soul that wanders these corpses, and there's a soul who's no place to go. And there's a soul who sits on a hilltop, and she sees that his heart's made of stone. So he sits on the chest, and his pain just turned into home. Is there no helper to even the sun? Had wished it can sink or freeze, but it was perfectly designed in a way that it moves but a little, and its role is to shed light and transmit heat. It could comprehend not its part in the bigger plan, so it must obey and watch as this thirst increases. But you see, us humans, how great we are. We're never meant to stoop so low, because our heart just crumbled to dust, and there's a soul who's no place to go. I'm walking in the footsteps of strangers, and I freeze for a moment in time. I saw angels descending and mourning, and I felt them calling and cry. But the sky just crumbled above me, and I thought that I'd open my eyes, and I thought I arrived as a lover, but I've seen how the lovers are alive. And I thought I arrived as a loved one, but I'm leaving as someone who's died. All my memories are blurry and faded. All my dreams came from another life. But we just got married, and our life was never meant to be like this. But the cries of a man broke my heart, and my heart was never meant to bleed like this. I couldn't look into his eyes if he came back alive, and we all got the news that Hussein had just died. I've been walking for days, months. I lost track of time, but not space. I know where I'm going, and I know that I'll reach, I just don't know when. I have this letter in my hand, and it reads, "Oh friend, I really need you right now. I have missed you, and I will miss you, and I can't pretend this is easy. I'm about to lose everything that's ever been close to me, and the worst part is they see me. The best part is he sees me. And I know this destiny is the birthmark that will free me, but if you can, and only if you can, you should travel to this land of the lost souls. So I must go. For there I will find my purpose, and I know too well what the meaning of these words is. So I promise myself when we meet, I will smile on the surface, though I'm burning inside. It's been years and I'm scared too, but love is stronger than fear. I've left everything I've ever known in my rear view, but I can feel my heart fading tonight. To whomever reads this journal, my story ends here. I was betrayed by time, and I can't bring my fingers to write what I saw when I came to this dry land. Wandering corpses. All I have left is my life and this letter in my right hand. I sat there, I cried and I cried. I looked for my friend just to tell him I was here, and I tried all I could to be there when he were killed. See, today I died too, but only inside, and it was time that had killed me. So where does a dead man go? It is only twice in the history books it is said that a soul took its leave and the sky turned red. When the children of Israel turned violent and presented John the Baptist's head. And the other time was, "O Father, here lies your beloved in the open, baptized by his own blood in the land. I wish the mountains had crushed the valley. I wish the heavens fell down where I stand. O Mother, the one who was seated in blood. Today I sit here in my tears. And did you see what they did to your son? He lays on a crimson carpet, and the skies just fell from above, and the angels flew back and forth, and my heart just crumbled to dust, as it was me who ran to that hilltop, and I watched as those hearts made of stone They tore him to pieces, and he wouldn't stop bleeding. And I wished that they'd leave him alone. And just as I thought it was over, just as I thought they would go, he sat on his chest, and he stabbed at his... And his pain just turned into home. And we swear that, though we acknowledge that our souls have been controlled by dark forces, we walk to his camp so restless. As we transition into higher dimensions, with our faces face down, sons of the free, they'll call us. Those who knew not, but we know now. Living in a fast lane, now we slow down, slow down. Heaven on my right side, flames on my left, I'm shaking. Cause the gates never close, and though the gates never closed, we betray him. And every day we betray him. Grandson is alive and he's waiting, waiting. I've been busy with my life, yet I'm walking towards him. Cause a flower left a fragrance crawling. And something about it was cold. And the fragrance left us mourning. And there's a soul that wanders these corpses. And there's a soul who has no place to go. Assalamu alaikum.
Hassan, thank you for that beautiful poetry. Brothers, before we continue with the program, please can we stand up and move as far forward as possible? You can see there's plenty of brothers coming in right now. We're expecting more as well, as it's Friday night. Please, with 3 loud salawats, can we move as far forward as possible? Allahumma salli Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. Allah. Brothers, there's plenty of space here at the front, on my left here, on my right near the mimbar. Please, with another loud salawat, can we move as far forward as possible? There's plenty of people coming in still. Allahumma. Ahsant. We highly encourage all attendees to remain until the end of the program. Inshallah, together we can create an atmosphere befitting of the majalis of Aba Abdullah. We will also be conducting another Q&A session before Salatul Maghribain tonight with Shaykh Mahdi Rastani. Please submit your questions on slido.com using the code Hujjat. We thank Shaykh for his time and pray that this will be beneficial for all of us. Please can we now welcome Shaykh Mahdi Rastani to deliver his lecture on the topic entitled Mental Health in Islam with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغه مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل معدود. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين يقولون إذا أصابتهم مصيبة إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المفلحون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات الله. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah. The topic that we'll be discussing tonight, inshallah, is titled Mental Health in Islam. The reality is, in our communities, there are certain tests that people go through, community members go through, that we normally associate with spiritual growth. If someone were to let you know that a particular community member has gotten into a car accident, for example, they're now in the hospital, typically you will find people in the community will circle around that person. They will gravitate towards that person. Maybe they will start supporting that person. They will send food to their homes. They will call that person to check up on them, and so on and so forth. Because the general understanding is that if you're going through this difficulty, it's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is punishing you. It's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing you, and we are here for you. We're here to support you. At the same time, however, when there are those within our community members, and the numbers are only increasing, the statistics tell us, when they go through mental health challenges, you don't find the community coming together as much as you would see with a physical ailment and a physical illness. And therefore, it's important for us to understand what is Islam's take on this issue of mental health and mental illnesses and challenges. When you look at the statistics, you find that this challenge is only growing day after day. When people go through this within our communities, people have different understandings, and they struggle sometimes to pinpoint what is Islam's approach when it comes to this issue. If I come across a person who is struggling mentally, does this mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like this person? Does it mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is punishing this person? Is this illness the kafara of this person because of something else that he did? Maybe he was very arrogant in his life, and now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quote unquote putting him in his place. Or does it mean none of these things? It's just another aspect of life. Or maybe it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen him out of many of his other servants for a specific test. And this might even in fact show that he has a higher status than others. What is Islam's approach when it comes to this issue? Tonight, inshallah, we want to get into this and understand that when you look at the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt, you find the tests that came their way were not one shape and form. All of the different shapes and forms that you can possibly think of, these are the different types of tests that you find in the life of the Prophet, and you find in the life of the Ahlul Bayt as well. In the life of the Prophet himself, some of those who were the closest members of his family, in particular, for example, his uncle, Abu Lahab, was one of the uncles of the Prophet. You find he was one of the staunchest enemies of the Prophet. Amongst the Ahlul Bayt, within the Imams, we have what? We have brothers of Imams who went against them. We have uncles of Imams who claimed imamah and created problems for them, like Ja'far al-Kadhdhab when it came to the 11th and the 12th Imam. Therefore, their tests came in all sorts of shapes and forms. Tonight, inshallah, we want to delve into this topic. And in order to do so, we'll pose the following questions. Number one, what do statistics tell us about how prevalent mental illnesses have become and the status and the situation of mental health
in today's society? Number two, what does Quran and Hadith tell us about the different forms and shapes in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tests come towards us? Do they only come in 1 or 2 or 5 different shapes and forms, or do they come in all sorts of shapes and forms? Number 3, when difficulties befall a believer, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to communicate to us when it comes to this person? Does it mean God is punishing him? Does it have no message at all? Does it mean he's a special servant of God? Can we at the end of the day judge in terms of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to communicate to us through the difficulty that this believer is going through? Number 4, if I am dealing with a mental illness, or I know someone who is dealing with a mental illness, should I tell them to recite verses of Quran? Should I tell them to be patient? Should I tell them to recite this dua or that dua? Should I tell them to go and get professional help? Or should I do all of the above? What is my duty when it comes to these types of situations? Number 5, what foundational factors do we find in Islam that aids and helps the human being to deal with mental illnesses or to avoid them at certain times? What principles do we find embedded within Islam that stops the believer to even get to that point sometimes? And number 6, and finally, what is one thing that every single person hearing my voice tonight, sitting here or online, can do when they come across a person who might be struggling with a mental illness? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma. When you look at the statistics on mental illness, you find, of course, the numbers are increasing, and there's no surprise here. The type of lifestyle that we have around us nowadays, anywhere in the Western world, is a type of lifestyle that only provokes and only pushes mental illnesses further and further. The statistics will tell you between 20 to 30% of British society or the societies in the North America and other parts of the world, roughly, these are the numbers, are people who are dealing with different types of mental illness. It might be depression, it might be other forms of mental illness as well. But as we mentioned, unfortunately within our communities, still there is not a clear understanding as it relates to a person who might be going through these types of situations. When it takes place within a community, and it always does, whether we want to talk about it or not, it is certainly present, there's no doubt about that, people don't know how to act. You find if a person went through a physical ailment, if they got into a car accident, if God forbid we found out one day that a community member is struggling with cancer, for example, you'll find that people will gravitate towards that person. People will come around that person, they will support that person, they'll provide food, they'll see if they can help financially, they'll do everything in their power to try to get this person closer to a form of healing. But when it comes to mental illnesses and mental challenges, that culture has not been fully built yet. It's almost as if we don't fully know how to deal with this issue. Therefore, it's important for us to understand what is Islam's take on this issue. First point we have to understand, brothers and sisters, the tests that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts within our lives does not come in the pre-packaged shapes and forms that we are used to. This is the core misunderstanding here. Generally, when we look at tests and challenges, we think these are the tests that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts in front of me. And when a test occurs outside of this pre-packaged list that I already have in my mind, I say, well, wait a second, I don't know what this one is. These are tests. Cancer is a test. Yes? Losing a loved one is a test. But depression, that's not in my list. What do you mean it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What do you mean Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing bala of this person the same way he was doing bala when he took the loved one of this one? And so when you look into the verses of the Quran, you find the Quran throws this very wide net when it comes to bala and tests. The Quran didn't come and say, we're going to test you in this way or in that way. The Quran said, we're going to test you in a lot of different ways. Sometimes the Quran generally said, وَلَا تُبْلَوُنَّ فِي أَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ. You will be tested when it comes to your wealth. You will be tested when it comes to yourselves. That's all encompassing. That's a physical side of the discussion. There's also a mental side to that discussion as well. Then other times, like these famous verses that we've heard from Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came forward and said, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ, yes, fear, وَالْجُوعِ, hunger, وَنَقْسٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ, you're going to lose wealth, وَالْأَنفُسِ, loved ones, وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and the results of your work, you're going to lose all of this. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and give the glad tidings to those who are showing patience. The Quran threw this very wide net in terms of what type of tests are going to come your way. Look at the prophets of God. Their tests were in all different shapes and forms. And this leads us to a conversation that our beloved sixth Imam, Al-Imam As-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Yes, the narration is from the fifth Imam, Al-Imam Al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The companion of the fifth Imam came to him. He said, I was discussing this topic of bala with Mughira, with someone else. And he said that a mu'min, a believer, is only tested in certain ways. La yubtala bil juzam wala bil baras. A believer will never be tested with those types of tests that make him unappealing to other people. Juzam, baras, these are skin conditions. Leprosy. Say he will never be tested in this way. So the Imam looked at his companion. He said, no, he's definitely wrong. So why? How is that so? He's saying he won't be tested with anything that makes him unappealing to others. He said, no. إِن كَانَ غَافِلًا عَنْ صَاحِبِ يَاسِينَ. He doesn't know about Sahib Yasin. Who's Sahib Yasin? This mysterious figure that occurs in Surah Yasin. وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ يَسْعَى. That person who came running. The Quran doesn't tell us too much about him, yes? This type of characters are my favorite characters, by the way, in the Quran. The Quran doesn't tell you who they are. It's like these movies sometimes, yes? You see the main character is stuck, then a hero comes out of nowhere. You never find out who he was or what happened. It's just part of the story. The Quran said there was Sahib Yasin. He came and he tried to guide his people when it came to those 2 or 3 prophets who had come to their people. You read about them in Surah Yasin. Some have said it was during the time of after Isa alayhi salam, but there's other opinions as well. The fifth Imam said Sahib Yasin kana mukanna'an. He was born without fingers. His hand was not fully grown. And the Imam said, it's almost as if I see him with his takni'a. I can see him holding his hand and trying to preach to his people, but his fingers are not fully grown. He's born with this disability. And then the Imam said this. He said, Innal mu'mina, a believer, yubtala bi kulli baliyah. A believer will be tested with every single test that you can possibly think of. Possible. Can he be tested with his children? Possible. Can he be tested because authorities are giving him a hard time? Possible. Can he be tested with his wealth? Possible. Can he be tested with his mental health? Possible. He said, Innal mu'mina yubtala bi kulli baliyya wa yamutu bi kulli mitatin. And he can die any death. You know, certain deaths within our community, we praise them. Certain deaths, we look down upon that person. Doesn't seem very spiritual. Well, what do you know? This one was on his way towards Karbala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his soul. Of course, our community say, mashallah, he was on his way towards it. This one might have been on his way to provide for his family, and he lost his life. What do you know? Maybe this one has a higher status. We don't know. The Imam said, Al-mu'min yubtala bi kulli baliyah. He can be tested potentially with any possible test. Wa yamutu bi kulli mitatin. And he can die any death. Yes, la yaqtulu nafsahu. He won't take his own life. And that is the topic of suicide that is clearly haram in Islam and is a discussion for another time. But the Imam said, there's always different types of tests that might come your way. In our communities, only certain types of tests are tied to spiritual growth in our view. Other tests happen, we point the finger at this person. So if I come across a person who is dealing with this type of a test, how am I supposed to look at it? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishing this person? No, you can't say that. But when you look in our communities, brothers and sisters, and I've spoken to parents They tell me, they say, because of this situation that we have in our family, people look at us weird. People look at us in different ways. And let me be frank, parents who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with a child, but the child has a mental challenge, yes, a limitation. God forbid the parents come, then pointing of the fingers and the chit-chatting and, oh, you must have done something wrong. This is why. Who else Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a child that had difficulties, had disabilities? Prophets of God. The Quran says one of the tests that we put in front of Sulaiman was this. The Quran says Sulaiman had reached a point, of course, where he had so much wealth and power available to him. Now, he's a prophet of God. We don't speak of Sulaiman and Solomon the way other faiths speak of Solomon. They say things about Solomon I can't even get into, yes? He was, of course, from our perspective, one of the greatest servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, infallible, so on and so forth. The Quran says one of the tests that we put in front of Sulaiman was because Sulaiman had so much wealth and power and authority, there was a time where he became ghafil for a second. We wanted to remind him, yes? He's human at the end of the day. So the Quran says, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا Sulaiman. We tested Sulaiman. We wanted to bring him back to our remembrance. وَأَلْقَيْنَا عَلَى كُرْسِيِّهِ جَسَدًا ثُمَّ أَنَابٍ. We put on his throne jasadan. Look at what the Mufassirin say. Many of the Mufassirin say this jasad, this corpse, this body, what body was it? Many of the Mufassirin say Sulaiman was granted a child that had many disabilities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him that child. Part of the plan was to remind him that he's not in charge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in charge. Yes, you have all this wealth. You have all of this power. But at the end of the day, who runs the show here? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala runs the show here. Now, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He does that, He doesn't just do that for Sulaiman. He has His own plan for this young man who might be dealing with his disability, yes? But that's a discussion for another time. The prophets of God were given children who had disabilities. And then this person comes in our community and people deal with him almost as if he did something wrong. She did something wrong. Let me say this, brothers and sisters, when you come across a vulnerable person in your community because of this issue or other issues, yes, you have to be very careful. Why? Because that person already has so much pressure on them. That person is already carrying such a heavy burden. Their heart can break so much faster than anybody else. Someone else, you might joke around with them, you might push them around a little bit. It's not a big deal. It's another community member that you know from before. This person is already coming with this huge burden. Sometimes the smallest things you say, it breaks the heart of this person. And God forbid you break the heart of another believer. The hadith says, hadith Qudsi, multiple times this is narrated. فَلْيَأْذَنْ بِحَرْبٍ مِّنِّي. If you go out there breaking hearts, then you've declared war against me. Because I take care of my servants. You want to come and break the heart of my servants? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Hadith Qudsi, فَلْيَأْذَنْ بِحَرْبٍ مِّنِّي. You're declaring war against me now. So at the first level, if someone is going through a mental challenge, a depression, whatever the case might be, severe anxiety, can I sit there and say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is punishing this person? No. Number two, can I say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes this person? Can't say that either. In fact, because we don't know what's happening in the life of that person, we're looking at it from this side of the aisle. The only understanding you and I can possibly walk away with, and the only assumption you and I can walk away with is this, that out of all of the servants within this community, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose this person for this difficult test. This person must have, as far as we can tell, because we're on this side of the aisle, yes? As far as we can tell, this person is a special servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen them for this difficulty. Especially when the difficulty was not in their hands at all. Sometimes there's difficulties, you and I make the wrong decision, and then we put it on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This guy, he came to walk across the street, he closed his eyes. Close his eyes, inshallah, it'll be fine. He's walking, the car hits him. Say, brother, what happened? He says, Inshallah khair, God has a reason for everything. The reason was you closed your eyes. But when it's not in his hands and it comes out of the blue, like many mental illnesses do, then this is what? This is we sit back and say, you must be a special servant of God. Now, can we say that for sure or not? We don't know, but this is the assumption that we work with. This is how we approach this issue. We don't sit there and say, oh, you must have done something wrong. When you were young, you did something wrong. Let me be a little bit more frank. When you were married, in the process of marriage and so on and so forth, you did something wrong. That's why, no, you don't have the right to make that judgment. As far as you're concerned, this might be a special servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has chosen for this particular difficulty. Aloud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let us move on. The other points that come to mind here is this. If I am now dealing with this difficulty, or I know someone who is dealing with this difficulty, what do I do here? This is where our community struggles. And people will say, Alhamdulillah, we are blessed with the most complete faiths. We are blessed with the most complete religion. So they tell this person, well, let's see what Islamic solution there is to this problem. I'm here to summarize this. Islam, brothers and sisters, when it comes to mental health, has some general guidelines, which we will go through, yes? But at the end of the day, you cannot achieve much without professional help. You need professional help. Islam didn't come to dismantle other sciences. Islam came to grow other sciences. Some people's understanding is that Islam came to replace all these other sciences. No. Why do you think Muslims for thousands of years, they were inventing medicine and so on and so forth? Because this was part of their understanding of Islam. Their understanding of Islam was, Islam gives me that purpose to go out in the world and to develop these sciences. Not that Islam is supposed to come and replace these sciences. Islam comes and gives you some foundational things. When it comes to your diet, Islam doesn't tell you everything that you need to eat. Islam gives you some general guidelines. The rest is a science that you have to go out there, work hard, find the resources to be able to apply it in your life. Yes? So when it came to this issue, it's the same thing. It's interesting. When your arm breaks, God forbid, you never come to the Shaykh and say, Shaykh, my arm broke. What does Islam say here? You never do this. You say, Shaykh, my arm broke, if you could pray for me. And then you head where? You go to the hospital. Yes? Of course, here, apparently, it takes many months by the time they get to your situation, yes? Where I come from, they charge you your whole life. Where you guys are, it takes a very long time to get to your situation. When you have physical ailments, you don't say, well, Islam has to take care of this. You say, Islam has some general guidelines, then I have to go and get some professional help, yes? Same thing when it comes to mental illness as well. And let me go a step further. Brothers and sisters, the sooner you get help, the better. The sooner you reach out for help, the better. Don't let it develop. Don't let it continue. This wife and husband are struggling with a particular issue. Instead of getting help now when things are still raw, they wait 15 years. Then after 15 years, Shaykh, our life is falling apart. Can you just spend a couple hours with us to solve this? No, 15 years ago we were supposed to solve with this. 15 years ago, before your wife or your husband has been burnt and hurt so much. Mental illnesses are the same thing. Sometimes a situation, a condition that a child has, if they understand it at a young age, it can completely be solved. But no, this person's afraid. What will this person say? What will that person say? Trust me, I'm not saying it's easy. It's very difficult. If you can sit there and say, I need help, and get help from a professional, it takes a lot of bravery. And know that if that illness was not in your hands, you were just dealing with it. It came out of the blue, yes? Or it might have been something from a trauma that wasn't in your hands, imposed on you by someone else. This is part of your worship. This is part of your ibadah. You're taking care of yourself. You're healing yourself. This has reward in it. When the verse of the Quran said, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ, did the verse say, those who, when they lose a loved one, they say, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ? No, that's not what the verse said. I know we recite this verse only for when? When people leave this world. The Quran said, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ. Difficulty, any difficulty has come your way, go and reach out for help. The verse is very broad. And then the Quran said, if you're patient with your healing process, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Good for them. And then the Quran said what? This is hope, brothers and sisters, for those of us who deal with this, or for those who know other people who deal with it. The Quran said, listen, if you end up in this situation, musibah, any musibah, physical, mental, whatever the case might be, musibah, and you're patient, means you try to work through it, you try to solve it, whatever the case might be, the Quran said, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. Those individuals, God's salawat is descending upon them. Who else is there whose God's salawat is descending upon him? That is who? That is inna Allah wa malaikatuhu yusalluna ala nabi. That is the Prophet of God, Muhammadin al-Mustafa. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Look at where we started. Look at where you are now. We started from a person who other community members look at and say, this person must be being punished. Now we've reached the point where if he's patient and he starts this healing process of his, he is now grouped in the same group, rough, where the messenger of God is. God looks at you and that musibah of yours, if you're being patient with it, and he says, my salawat goes towards you. I am saluting you. Allah, what is this? أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المفلحون. In Surah Al-Baqarah we read. This difficulty you're going through, go and ask for help. Now, yes, Islam has some general guidelines. And if today you find in these societies that we live in, mental health has become such a major issue, some of it, a part of it, is because these principles that Islam wants in our lives is not existing in the life of this secular society. What are those? Let us begin from number one. Why am I going through these? Because there are times someone says, if someone is dealing with a mental health situation, Islam is no benefit for them. This is wrong. Islam has benefit for them. Islam is part of the puzzle. Islam is a piece of the solution. There are times, and a dear colleague of mine once said this, a very dear friend of mine, and I disagree with him very humbly and respectfully. He said, if someone is dealing with a mental illness, don't tell him be patient. Don't tell him look on the bright side. Don't tell him read the verses of the Quran. Don't tell him this. I humbly disagree. All of these things are also good. You should tell him to do all of these things, but none of these replace getting professional help. Yes, in that sense, completely correct. Look on the bright side. Hope is an important part of this recovery process. You can't even get through the recovery process unless there's positive people around you. Unless there's people around you who continue to push you forward. It's not easy. It's very difficult. One morning you wake up, it's normal. The next morning you wake up, it's like the whole world is dark. This is how depression is. It's not easy. You need people around you to remind you and to nudge you along the way and tell you, be patient. There's light at the end of this tunnel. Yes? Be patient. Things will get easier, inshallah. Look at the brighter side of things as you're getting professional help. Along with this, these are all very important things. What does Islam do for us? Number one, Islam fundamentally took the emphasis from this world and placed it on the hereafter. This is very important. Very important. Look, brothers and sisters, at what's happening in Palestine today. Children under rubble, atrocities that the human mind cannot digest. For those of us who are sitting here, and I think I speak on behalf of many of us, life has not been the same. This Muharram is different. Because we see these things every day and night. Unbelievable atrocities. But then this father holds their child in their hand, says, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil. Why? Because Islam told him, listen, at the end of the day, whatever happens here, there is another world. This doesn't solve mental illness. It contributes for you to say, yes, maybe my life isn't perfect here. Maybe I have major issues. But this is not where life actually happens. The Quran said, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ. This we do here is more of a game. If it's not going well for you, don't worry. وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. That's where life actually happens. Hayawan comes from hay. It means that's where actually life happens. That is principle number one. Islam said, listen, whatever is going on over here, this is not the end of the story. In some ways, it's not even the beginning of the story. It's not even a speck in the longer version of your life. Number one. Number two, Islam also taught us other principles. Of those, Islam gave me a sense of purpose in life. Go and look at the studies between having a sense of purpose and mental illness. Without a sense of purpose in life, taking care of your mental health becomes very difficult. It's extremely painful. The life we live, it comes with all sorts of headaches and concerns and limitations and difficulties and injustices. Life is not fair. The only way I can deal with these is to have a sense of purpose at the end of the day. Now, if I'm not a believer and I have no sense of purpose, then it becomes that much more difficult for me. Number two. Number three, Islam wanted us, and this one is applicable for all of us sitting here. Islam wanted for us to build a sense of community and belonging. Have we done a good job of this? No. Some communities are very successful in this, some not so much. This is one that some of our communities struggle with. A sense of community and belonging. You know how important it is that when this young man walks in, he feels welcome. Very important. Why do you think Islam came and said, oh, when you come to this believer, don't you ever say anything to bother him. Don't you sit there and backbite him. Don't you ever judge him as if you know his life better than himself. Don't you sit there and spread rumors about him. Why? Because when you put all of this together, it builds a sense of belonging and community. Islam has this stuff built into it. These are things that, if done well, contribute to mental illness decreasing. It'll still happen, but the numbers, of course, will increase. That is number three. Let us move on to number four. Keeping family together and silatul rahim. Why does Islam keep saying, oh, go and just say salam at least to that uncle of yours? Maybe he doesn't have the best akhlaq. But go and visit them even in a limited fashion. In Islam, you don't have to deal with all of your relatives exactly in the same way. No, some relatives, it's easier to spend time with them. Some relatives, mashallah, their akhlaq is so terrible. 5 minutes you sit with them, you're like, well, how can I leave now? Some of them, they start talking, they never end. Relatives come in all sorts of shapes and forms, yes? Islam said you can manage your relationship. With some of them, you have a closer relationship. With others, you have a further relationship. But Islam said all of them, you have to have some sort of relationship, yes? If you look in the books of Ayatollah Sistani, he will tell you, when you come across a relative, a bare minimum, at least a blood relative, at least, yes? Bare minimum is what? Is that you cannot treat them as if they are a stranger. You stop by and say, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? Okay, great, wonderful, and you move on with your life. Why did Islam emphasize this so much? Because Islam doesn't want you to end up like the society we live in, where people are on their deathbed, there's no one to come visit them. These are factors that contribute to severe mental illness. Isolation is a big thing when it comes to mental illness. Number four. Number five, thinking positive of others. Husnul dhann. Big element in mental illness and preventing it. If you're living your life and constantly every day I'm thinking, this person came and said this, what did they mean by this? This one came, but this time the salam they said was not as good as last time. Maybe they heard something about me they're not telling me. And if they smile at me the next time, no, I'm not going to believe that smile because last time they didn't do it. So now there's this whole thing going on. Shaykh, you're being naive. There's really some things going on. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But if you want to live your life like this, you're going to fall apart. Husnul dhann is for this. Maybe this person doesn't like you so much. Maybe they do. Either way, move on with your life. Have a positive mentality. Now, if they really have a problem with you, let them come and tell you. Let them come and say, listen, you did this, you did that, whatever. Don't just live in your mind constantly 24/7. What if this? What if that? How come she said this one? How come she said that one? If you know for sure, take it. If you don't know, and you're going to live your life like this, you're going to drive yourself crazy. As a human being can only take so much. This is number 4. Number 5, and finally, what Islam taught us was gratefulness and thankfulness. These are foundational principles, brothers and sisters, to help me with my mental health, to maybe even prevent ending up in that situation where I'm dealing with a mental illness. Yes, but of course, if I'm already there, nothing is going to help me like professional help. I need to get professional help. And if there are institutions within communities that help with this, they need to be supported. There are, for example, here in this community, madrasa has put together a program for this, for children who struggle. For example, they have certain disabilities. This needs to be supported. This is important, yes? And that brings us, inshallah, to the final point that we will make tonight with a loud salawat, please. One more loud salawat, please. Shaykh, I'm not a professional. How am I supposed to help this person? I'm just a normal person in the community. But I know this friend of mine is struggling with this. I know this relative of mine is struggling with this. How should I help them? There is one thing, brothers and sisters, every single person in the community can and should do when they come across someone who is struggling, even if it's a physical struggle, but even more so when it is a mental challenge. What is that one thing that everybody can do? That one thing that everyone can do is have your ears open to hear the struggle of that person. Let them vent to you. Let them speak to you. Let them share what they're going through. This is very powerful. This is very important. Part of the healing process when it comes to certain mental illnesses is for a person to walk through what they have gone through and to speak through it and talk through it. Yes, the people we come across, always remember this as a general principle in life. The people you and I come across, we cannot solve all of their problems. The people we come across, we cannot solve all of their needs. But what you can always do is bring a smile to their face and meet them with good akhlaq. That one is free. That one is available all the time. And hence you find this beautiful narration that Shaykh al-Saduq, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his soul, has narrated in his book of Al-Amali or Al-Majalis from our beloved Prophet Muhammadin al-Mustafa salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He said what? He said, Innakum lan tasa'un nas bi amwalikum. You won't be able to take care of the needs of all of the people with your wealth. You won't be able to always solve the needs of people. You think when people came to the Ahl Bayt always were able to take care of their financial situation? No, many of times they did. Sometimes they weren't able to fully do it. That's why people struggled during the time of the Ahl Bayt as well. Said, Innakum lan tasa'un nas bi amwalikum. You won't be able to comprehensively take care of everybody with your wealth. So he said, what should you do? He said, فَسَعُوهُمْ بِأَخْلَاقِكُمْ. So show them good akhlaq. Bring a smile to their face. You can't solve the problem? At least lend your ear for a little bit. At least take out some time and sit with them. At least let them know you care. This means a lot for a person who is struggling and is going through different types of tests, particularly when it comes to mental difficulties and mental challenges, yes? And this brings us to the plains of Karbala, where the tests have now piled up, brothers and sisters, and the masa'ib have added one after another. And what can our beloved third Imam do in these moments? All he can do is go and sit by the body of each of these shuhada and console the families that are present in the plains of Karbala. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka yabna Rasulillah. As we get closer and closer to the 10th of Muharram, we come to a night where now Hussein, on this night, he will feel a little bit of guilt when these two shuhada go to the battlefield. And who are these two individuals? These are the two individuals who are the sons of Zainab salamullahi alayha. The masa'ib of the 10th of Muharram impacted brothers. The masa'ib sometimes impacted children, fathers, uncles. But the masa'ib of a mother is on a different level, brothers and sisters. The masa'ib of Lady Zainab is something else, because what is there that is more valuable to a mother than her own children? Yes? And you can see that on the 10th of Muharram, as the battle begun, every now and then maybe Zainab looks at her own children and she knows it's time for her to prepare her own children to become a sacrifice. But of course she knows Hussein is going to feel embarrassed when the two sons of Zainab go to his tent. Maybe Zainab is thinking to herself, when is the right time? When is the right moment to bring my two gifts for Hussein? When is the right time to bring my own children for Hussein, to them to be sacrificed for Hussein? The narration says the companions went to the battlefield, they were martyred. Then there came time where the Ahl Bayt started to go. And Zainab knows now the time is coming closer and closer. And the narration says the first of the Ahlul Bayt was Ali al-Akbar. He came to the tent and Hussein quickly gave him permission to go to the battlefield. When they brought the body of Ali al-Akbar back to the tents, then Zainab knew my brother Hussein needs my help now. Because now when he was pulling back the body of Ali al-Akbar and he kept saying, Ala dunya ba'daka al-afa, I don't want this world after you, O Ali. Zainab knows that her brother Hussein can no longer take this pain anymore. His patience is running out at this point. The narration says Zainab went to her two children, Aoun and Muhammad, and said, Aoun and Muhammad, come, I want to tell you something. This is that day I was preparing you for. This is that day I was raising you for. And Zainab is very patient. Zainab is very firm. But at the end of the day, Zainab is a mother, isn't she? At the end of the day, when a mother looks upon her child, this child that she poured all of her heart into, all of her life into, both of these flowers of hers, you can tell somewhere where Zainab was speaking to her children, her voice must have been breaking in the middle. Her heart must have missing a beat every now and then. Because how can a mother stand in front of the children, speak to them moments before they're going to be massacred in the battlefield? Then Zainab, some narrations say, she came and put on the armor of Aoun and Muhammad. What does the heart of a mother go through in these moments? And she started to prepare them. Every other mother prepares their children for a wedding, for to become a groom. But Zainab is preparing her own sons to go to the battlefield and parts of their bodies to come back towards the tents. The narration says she turned to Aoun and Muhammad, my children, go to Hussein. And when you ask him, my brother will not give you permission, because I know Hussein. I've grown up with Hussein. Hussein will not give you permission to go to the battlefield. But my children insist, don't let him say no to you. And one narration says that Zainab told them, if you go there and he keeps saying no, let me tell you what to say. Go and ask by the right of our mother Fatima. If you ask by the right of our mother Fatima, Hussein will then give you the okay. Hussein will then give you the approval to go to the battlefield. Imagine what happened to the heart of Hussein when he's in the tents and he hears the footsteps of Aoun and Muhammad coming back towards these tents, and he knows what they've come for. And imagine the little bit of embarrassment that Hussein has on his face and the guilt that he feels in his heart in these moments. The narration says they both came in and they started to plead to Imam al-Hussein, and Hussein kept saying, no, you're the amana of my sister, you're the amana of my family, how can I send you to the battlefield? Until they said, oh Hussein, oh uncle, by the right of your mother Fatima, let us go. There's no one else to defend these tents, these women and children on this day. Hussein must have had his tears flowing from his eyes all over his face and his beard. Aoun and Muhammad go to the battlefield, and maybe Zainab is watching from the tents, just witnessing what's happening to her children in the battlefield until Aoun and Muhammad are both martyred. Then they say Zainab would always run out to the battlefield to help Hussein bring back the body of the Shaheed. But this time Hussein came by himself. This time Zainab stayed in the tent. Why? Because Zainab knows what Hussein is going through. Zainab knows Hussein can't take that moment. If their eyes meet while he's pulling the bodies of Aoun and Muhammad back towards the tents, what will this do to the heart of Hussein? The narration says Hussein picked up Aoun and Muhammad. He started to take them back to the tents, and their feet were dragging in the sand of the plains of Karbala. But I'll add this part, brothers and sisters. You can be sure that at one point when the bodies got back to behind the tents, of course Zainab must have made her way behind the tents, yes? Of course Zainab, a mother, must have gone and sat beside the body of Aoun and Muhammad. Maybe she put her face on the body of Aoun and Muhammad, and she started to just speak to them. My sons, I would have wished for you to grow up one day. I would have wished for you to live a happy life one day. But of course, your brother, your uncle Hussein needed your help. Of course, these enemies have come for all of these women and children. Imagine Zainab sitting by the body of Aoun and Muhammad behind these tents as Hussein sits in the tents, doesn't know what to do in these moments. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Let us take our hearts to the plains of Karbala and send our salams to our beloved third Imam. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. We're getting closer to the 10th of Muharram. You have to recite the salam with me. عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. Imagine yourself in Karbala. ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everyone. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات.
जब आन मोहम्मद ने मौला को बुलाया होगा, जब आन मोहम्मद ने मौला को बुलाया होगा, मासूम की लाशों पे अकबर का बाबा जाने کس حال میں آیا ہوگا جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. صدقہ ہے آن محمد اکبر اور علی اصغر کا، دو بیٹوں کی لاشوں پہ یہ سوچ کے ماں اجری نے ناشک بہایا ہوگا جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. ان دونوں کی لاشیں تو ایک دوجے سے دور پڑی تھی، مظلوم نے کیسے ان کی لاشوں کو جا کے تنہا مقتل سے اٹھایا ہوگا جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. عاشور کی شب رو رو کے زینب اجری نے لوگوں ان جگر کے دو ٹکڑوں کو ہے بن کر فخر مریم خود آپ سجایا ہوگا جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. سب مل کے جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا. صدقہ ہے آن محمد اکبر اور علی اصغر کا، دو بیٹوں کی لاشوں پہ یہ سوچ کے ماں اجری نے ناشک بہایا ہوگا جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا. ان دونوں کی لاشیں تو ایک دوجے سے دور پڑی تھی، مظلوم نے کیسے ان کی لاشوں کو جا کے تنہا مقتل سے اٹھایا ہوگا جب ان محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. جب ہوگا عاشور کی شب رو رو کے زینب اجری نے لوگوں ان جگر کے دو ٹکڑوں کو ہے بن کر فخر مریم خود آپ سجایا ہوگا جب آن محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا. زینب کی گود بھی اجری اور بھائی کٹے مقتل میں، خیموں کو آگ لگی تھی سجاد بیمار کو کیسے جلنے سے بچایا ہوگا جب اون محمد نے ماشاءاللہ جب اون محمد نے زینب کی گود بھی اجری اور بھائی کٹے مقتل میں خیموں کو آگ لگی تھی سجاد بیمار کو کیسے جلنے سے بچایا ہوگا جب اون محمد نے مولا کو جب اون محمد نے مولا کو بلایا کوفہ اور شام کی فوجیں ڈرتے ہوئے باغی ہوگی عباس کے شاگردوں نے اختر جب دور علی کا مقتل میں دکھایا ہوگا جب اون محمد نے مولا کو بلایا ہوگا جب اون محمد نے جب اون محمد نے صدقہ ہے اون محمد اکبر اور علی اکبر کا صدقہ ہے اون محمد اکبر اور علی اصغر کا دو بیٹوں کی لاشوں پہ یہ سوچ کے ماں اجری نے ناشک بہایا ہوگا جب جب اون محمد نے ہوگا ہے جب اون محمد نے یا حسین 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 سر کو کٹا کے دین پہ سر کو کٹا کے دین پہ خود کربلا پہ گھر دیا تو نے حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین خالق تیرا ممنون ہے خالق تیرا ممنون ہے مرتضیٰ اور فاطمہ کے نور عین یا حسین 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 اور محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
Brothers, we will now have the Q&A with Shaykh Mahdi Rastani.
thinking.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're back for another short Q&A session, but we thank Shaykh Mahdi for taking the time out outside of his lectures as well to spend with us, to answer some of the questions and hopefully make these sessions a bit more interactive as well. We'll start with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we'll get right into the questions. We've got about 15 minutes. Question number 1, around Western customs. So your lecture on that topic, Shaykh. The topic was subscribing to Western values. The idea of a woman changing her last name is expected in our communities. Is this something we should be adopting?
Yeah, so every one of these Western customs, and I want to be clear, when we call it Western, it's not Western versus Eastern. It's non-religious. So you might be living in India or Pakistan, there's customs there that are not religious. There's customs here that are not religious. It's not a Western, Eastern type of dynamic. Any custom I want to get involved with, I just have to look at what values does it promote. This one, I don't see any particular issue with it. So if you like it, you can do it. I don't really see any problem with it.
Hassan, thank you. Next one on God's judgment of non-Muslims. How can the non, you mentioned the non and defined what the non is in your lectures. How can they get away with not worshipping Allah or any other God? And how does that reconcile with the Quranic verse that man and jinn were created for the worship of Allah?
That's very good. So it depends what we say is going to happen to those individuals. So first of all, usually Muslims look at this issue from their own angle. Okay, from their own angle is where there's a religion, there's Islam, there's all of this kind of stuff. So how come this person is getting away? Well, that was your world. In the world of that person, none of that stuff made sense for him or was never exposed to it. So actually, that person should be the one who would say, why am I in this position? So if there's anyone who's going to complain about this, it's not us Muslims. We can't complain about this. To say, how come he's getting away with it? Nobody's getting away with anything. That person should sit there and say, how come this Muslim is getting away with the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed him with a religion and he knows exactly what to do. So if anyone is going to complain, it should be him, not us. So this is number 1. Number 2, just so we can understand this on an emotional level, the logical discussion is a separate thing. Emotionally, this argument is an emotional argument, yes? Imagine if you showed up to the Day of Judgment and they said, listen, in the type of wudu that you did, right, you did it wrong. Nobody taught you how to do the exactly right wudu. And I'm telling you because I teach this topic, there are many, they do their wudu wrong. They travel and they pray 4 rakat when they're supposed to pray 2 rakat, or vice versa, right? People make mistakes on this all the time. Maybe 60 years this person has been making this mistake. How would you feel if you showed up to the Day of Judgment and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, well, you should have known. Baba, I believed in you. I believed in the Ahl Bayt. I did all this stuff, you know? Yeah, but you didn't pray correctly. But I didn't know. Yeah, you should. Now, I'm not talking about a person who knows they don't know and they don't go and learn and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, a person who just never occurred to them that this could be wrong. And I can promise you, there's a lot of this type of people in our community. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sit there and say, well, you should have known. So this is the emotional side. We have to put it into perspective. What type of understanding of God would we have if God dealt with us in this way? He doesn't deal with us in this way. You show up on that day, if it never even occurred to you that this was wrong, it's okay. You'll be excused for it. If I knew it was wrong and I didn't learn, then of course I'll be held accountable for it. The verse, which one was the verse they said? How does it make sense with that?
وَمَا خَلَقْنَا الْجِنَّ
خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Ibadah is a very, very broad term. What does ibadah mean? We read that the animals, they do tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 24/7. Does that mean they believe in this and they believe in that? No, they do tasbih. By many scholars say just by the way they do things is their ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ibadah for every person is done in that particular way. Yes, if a person knows the truth and knows that he's supposed to act a certain way and he's not doing it, this goes against his ibadah, God will hold him accountable to it, yes? And then if the person really didn't know anything, if you remember, one of the groups of narration said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might test him right before the day of judgment. So the ibadah for him would be that test. And here it's very clear that Ahlul Bayt didn't share too much with us. So even if you go in the books of hadith and in the verses of the Quran, you find this is not a main concern of Quran. The Quran was mainly concerned about you and I because we know the truth and we don't act on it. Yes? But they seem to indicate that there will be some sort of test for this person if he really didn't know anything at all. There'll be some test for him. Now, is that test a one test and then they decide, like that narration was saying about the fire that we talked about in the lecture? Or is it multiple tests? These possibilities are all open. Because the narration said there's a fire and then they asked them to walk through it. This one narration, when we understand theology, we don't understand it based off of one narration. This is a big misunderstanding we have. When you want to attribute something as theology and say, on the day of judgment, this is going to happen to this person, you need enough evidence to point to it and say for certain, for sure. Yes? Let me add another point here, another argument that actually I didn't even mention in the lecture. If we point to someone and we say this person is not going to go to hellfire, human being, not animals and so on, human beings. If we point to them and say they're not going to go to hellfire, so where do they go? In the verses of the Quran, is there a place other than hellfire in heaven? The Quran keeps saying, وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثَلَاثَةً. And then those three groups are what? 2 in heaven and 1 in hellfire. There seems to be no other categorizations. Therefore, when the Quran says this person is not going to be punished, it seems to also indirectly indicate what? Some form of heaven. وَلَا يَنَالُونَ مَنَازِلَ الْأَبْرَارِ. Of course, not at the level that the others might be at. That's what we understand.
Hassan, thank you. Next question. Do we have a responsibility to encourage non-Muslims to the path of Ahlul Bayt? As Shias, we often stay within our bubble and don't do much da'wah or tabligh.
So first of all, I'm very surprised this bottle, the cap just came off. Apparently this is a big crime in, right? Because always the caps stick to the thing. No, it's fine, it's fine. This is very special. I'll keep this one. When it comes to our duty of spreading our faith, sure, definitely. On paper, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. Thank you. I was gladly surprised, actually. Sure, it's our responsibility. The reality is, this is a big part of this has to do with numbers. So in other schools of thought, the numbers are 7, 8 times what we have. So this is part of it. And also a part of it is, yes, we do lack in this area. There's no doubt about this. So both of those elements are true. If I can go ahead and do that, I should do that. But I will say this, that when someone is new to the faith, brothers and sisters, and I've seen this a lot, this idea of pushing that, oh, are you Shia or are you Sunni? This is not healthy. This is not good. Okay? Well, sometimes that person might ask questions themselves. Of course, you should definitely be there to answer their questions, yes? Even if you're trying to bring your friend into the faith, sure, you present Shiism as the default version. You understand? All of this is fine. But when someone is just wrapping their head around Islam, and now people go, are you Sunni or Shia? Which one is it? This one, that. This person first has to come into the fold of Islam. Then on their own time, especially if you have a relationship with them, you continue to speak to them and to preach to them and all that kind of stuff, so that when the time comes, they make that decision. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where, God forbid, overwhelmed before he's even coming into the faith. Then he says, "But you guys can't even figure out stuff. You guys are fighting amongst yourselves. What religion is this?" So we have to be very careful about that. But in general, putting our faith out there, yes, we definitely lack in this area. Part of it is a numbers problem. Another part of it is, yes, we don't take enough initiative here. So both are true.
Ahsant. One on your topic of domestic violence. So you talked about the relatives. Sorry, 1 second, that is the wrong one. What happens if a wife is seeking talaq from her husband as a result of domestic abuse and finds herself in a situation where he's not responding to the process?
Well, he's not responding to the process. Well, first of all, that's pretty much the default. 99% of the time, he doesn't respond to the process. That's why you go to the office of the marja and you say, well, I need this to happen. And yes, unfortunately, there's that process is not as smooth as it should be. And we also have to understand the nature of the problem is a problem occurring in the four walls of the house, and it's not so easy to pinpoint at the same time. So we have to be understanding on this topic, yes? Because it's in the four walls of the house, it's not in public. Something happens in public, it's easy to pinpoint. Something's happening inside the house, so the process is maybe not as smooth as it should be. That's the reality we have. But nonetheless, if you look at the rulings of Ayatul Sistani, this is one of the situations where the marja, if it's established, would go ahead and do that. Initially, what they try to do is get in touch with him and get him on board and get him to do the divorce on his own and so on. If it doesn't happen, then the marja will do it on his behalf, basically. So that's that.
Okay. And another one on customs and kind of cultural symbols as well. So are we allowed to wear cultural symbols without believing in what those symbols represent? And the example over here is the evil eye that you see on some jewelry.
Yeah, I'll be honest, this is a bigger deal within the Sunni school of thought than it is in our school of thought. So in the Sunni school of thought, they are very sensitive on this. And if you were to, for example, put that on and say, well, this is going to protect me, they might point to you and say you're mushrik. Because you're attributing this type of spiritual effect to something that the Messenger of God never utilized, right? And of course, the Messenger of God, definitely the Ahl Bayt, this is not a religious thing, it's a cultural thing, yes? Now, if someone has it and they've just put it there and it's part of their culture and they understand it's cultural, is this like haram? No, it doesn't seem to be haram. As long as I understand this is not a religious thing. It definitely doesn't have religious roots. Every community and every culture has their own weird way of protecting against evil eye. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but within the Iranian culture that I come from, if you buy a new car, we have Iranians here. I don't know if we have Iranians here. If you buy a new car and you want to make sure the car is protected from the evil eye, do you guys know what we do? Yes, we egg it. They throw eggs at the car. This is a serious thing. Now, you're hearing this, you're like, oh my God, like why would you do that? Egging the car is supposed to be a punishment. Every culture has their own understanding when it comes to the evil eye. It's okay if, as long as I know, it's not religious. It's a cultural thing we do, and that's it. Yeah.
Okay, and a couple of questions from the topic yesterday on hadith. How authentic is Nahj al-Balagha? Can we cite anything from there as definite attribution to Imam Ali alayhi salam?
Well, that idea of attributing anything definitely to the Ahl Bayt does not apply to any book, unfortunately. So you can pull up Al-Kafi, yes, and Al-Kafi has narrations in it that fundamentally go against all of our beliefs. Al-Kafi. So, let alone other books. So there's no book, we don't have this concept of Sahih. And even in the Sunni school of thought that they do have a concept of Sahih, you see the type of consequences it leads to. Once something makes it in there, then theologically you have to stick to it and you can't get away from it and so on and so forth, yes? Then other scholars came, like Albani and other scholars of hadith, and even they said within Bukhari and Muslim there are da'if hadith, yes? And this created a lot of backlash and so on and so forth. So we don't have this. What we do have, brothers and sisters, is a scale, yes? A scale. And as I mentioned yesterday in the lecture, of the first elements you look at is whether a book is an early source or not. Okay? Of the other elements is it musnad or not? Does it have chains or not? Every narrations, yes? And the other 4 or 5 elements that we talked about yesterday. Nahj al-Balagha, of course, is from Sayyid al-Radi. Yes? Sayyid al-Radi, early on, I can't remember exactly, 3rd or 4th century, somewhere in there, yes? 4th century. So, definitely amongst our earlier books, that's the extent that we can say. Now the rest, you have to go hadith by hadith and line by line and see where does it occur and can you find a chain for it in other books, because of course Nahj al-Balagha doesn't come with the chains. And it's very interesting, our scholars many times in the introduction to the book, they wrote, you know what, I'm just going to take out the chains to summarize the book so that the book doesn't become too thick. That created a lot of problems. And had they kept these chains in the books, a lot of our problems would have been solved today. But they took it out for their own wisdom, yes? So Sayyid Radi didn't put together this book as a compilation of the words of the first. He said, no, this is Nahj al-Balagha. This is for the Balagha. These are the ones that are eloquent. So he wasn't very concerned about the reliability of every single line. And therefore, What we can say about Nahjul Balagha is that it is definitely on the earlier side of our sources, so that's a big plus generally speaking, but then every line needs to be dealt with separately. Every hadith needs to be dealt with separately, yes.
We have just 1 minute, so maybe a quick question, but does Islam offer any advice for people close to us who refuse to seek help? And this is around the mental health topic you just talked about.
At the end of the day, all you can do is encourage someone to get help. Sometimes there are people who are very, they might be difficult to deal with. They might be difficult in terms of trying to get help. There's times people say, no, I don't want to get help. I mean, what can you do? The only thing you're responsible to do is to try to encourage them, let them know that you're there to support them, so on and so forth. Sometimes either they don't see the issue themselves, or sometimes they see the issue for whatever reason. He doesn't want to take those steps. There's not much you can do at that point, yes? The only thing you can do is help and encourage. Like if someone wasn't praying, for example, what would you do? You'd talk to them, you'd encourage them, you'd remind them, all that. But if they decide not to listen to you and they don't care, what else are you going to do? There's not much else to do. All you can do is encourage, inshallah.
So with that concludes today's Q&A. Obviously, there is more time tomorrow. Al-Hadi Youth have organized a more dedicated time for Q&A with Shaykh Mahdi. So for those interested, please do attend that after the main program. We'll end with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you, thank you.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله ربي وأتوب الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته أقوم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وأزائم مغفرتك
والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية، والفوض بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام، وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
الله أكبر الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد، الله الصمد، لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده، سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده، سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته بحول الله وقوته. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي فأجول في طلبه البلدان فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران لا أدري أفي سهل هو أم في جبل أم في أرض أم في سماء أم في بر أم في بحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا ومأخذه كريبا ولا تؤنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني عن عذابي
وأنا فكير إلى رحمتك، فصل على محمد وآله، وجد على عبدك بفضلك، إنك ذو فضل عظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إلهي عظم البلاء وبره الخفاء وانكشف الغطاء وانقطع الرجاء وضاقت الأرض ومنعت السماء، وأنت المستعان وإليك المشتكى وعليك المؤول في شدتي والرخاء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أولي الأمر الذين فرضت علينا طاعتهم وأرفتنا بذلك منزلتهم، ففرج عنا بحقهم فرجا عاجلا كريبا كلمه البصر أو هو أقرب. يا محمد يا علي يا علي يا محمد اكفياني فإنكما كافيان، وانصراني فإنكما ناصران. يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان الغوث الغوث الغوث، أدركني 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 الساعة الساعة الساعة. العجل 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 يا أرحم الراحمين بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر الأهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا ثم لعن الثانية والثالثة والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانا وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء وبعيد المدى، السلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأسر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر وظهور الأمر ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.